our laboratory of research in France. She's continues investigating on urbanization, processes related with mobility, and new mode of territories. For example, territories in between, informal and borderlands. Thanks, Bénédicte, for joining us.
Thanks. Also, first of all, I want to say many thanks to this invitation, and it's an opportunity, a great opportunity for me to discover this acrobat territories. I heard a lot of talking about them in other contexts, and in Lausanne especially. So it's a great chance for me to discover it in real. The topic I will present today is mainly issued from my doctoral research that I defended in 2007. So it means that for me it's now a rather old research. So I will apologize for that. You will see the references, maybe they are a bit old, but and the territory, I think, also is very different, but maybe in terms of methodology, we can talk to you and maybe a bit useful for us. So this PhD research started with an intuition. An intuition and an observation. The Belgian, on the right, a scattered urbanization form was not like the French peri-urbain. Furthermore, it didn't fit into the traditional models I was studying in an urban planning school in France after working 10 years as an architect in Belgium. So, on a second point, I will develop other models, and because precisely in the 90s, a lot of new words appeared to talk about scattered urban territories. Then I build a comparison that I will show for you, and comparison of those raising concepts. And it appeared that Città Diffuse had some kind of familiarity with the Belgian territory. So I tried to build from the Italian works a more precise definition with a set of characteristics I will show you in the third part. And then in the main part I will describe then how is the Belgian urbanization and why it is like that. And so which was the developing factors, causes of the urbanization, and also what was the consequences on the urban territory, its forms and its way of life, practice. And to conclude, I will explain a bit why now my interest changed after that study towards the crucial role played by the process of urbanization in understanding the forms. I think that the real specificity laid more in the process, which belong to a bottom-up family processes, much more than in the forms, even scattered. So, first of all, I will explain why this Belgian territory raised question for me.
That's really striking,
So yes, we know all those images now, I think indeed, showing that something happening here. So you have London, Paris, Germany here, in the Ruhr part, and not Strasbourg. Strasbourg is here. And this is Brussels and a ring of cities around Brussels. Lille is here, I'm working here now. And there is a cloud, a milky cloud here that shows now that something is happening. And that is another source, satellite source, also, yes. Sorry. Shows we have the cities and then we have models for that part, very clear, but in a narrow frame. Otherwise, there is a lot of, the red is artificialized territory around, and we have other kind of urbanization there. And that's a zoom of all this. Not very used to that. Yeah, that's the zoom of the part I just showed. And finally, it started to be really a research problematic, when I realized that in Belgium, even official geographers, National Statistic Office, every official definition in Belgium described the urban forms almost exactly with the same general patterns than in France or in theoretical models. I speak about a center with peripheries and decreasing density peripheries, decreasing importance, decreasing services, incomes, etc. They talk about banlieue, they talk about suburbs, peripheries, etc. And they described this Belgian territory with rings, with decreasing density. And going further with the study of this description, official description, I could highlight in the first part that how frequently those geographers needed to make use of the word exception. So they had this model. They had this model, but they explained it saying, okay, that's what is mainly, but here normally it's also orange and orange here and orange here, and this is a white hole and a white hole, but all of this is exception, except also. So it works accepted in that kind of territory. So I thought, when a model brings up so many exceptions, maybe it's not the good model. And so that's why I try to look for other models. I say model, but maybe it's concept, or I don't speak about economical model, but more spatial models like those in the right. And just a last example, a last illustration to speak about this Belgian exception. That is when the official geographers in Belgium had to invent other ways, and that they couldn't fit into the European norms. It's in the way of defining agglomeration. In Belgium, they use another kind of normative set with a maximal distance of 100 meters to define the agglomeration. Under 100 meters, it is agglomerated, and after more than 100 meters, it's not more agglomerated. So that's the Belgian norms, and we have 38 agglomerations in that way of defining it, and that's the way Europe or France, they use other norms of 200 meters, and that's why the Belgian geographers can't use these norms, because otherwise we would have just a big agglomeration from Lille here in France to Maastricht in Netherlands. It means 250 kilometers. And historically, all those cities are very different for the people at Brussels and Antwerp and Ghent. And they speak other languages. So culturally, it's impossible for Belgian people to think this is just one big agglomeration. So they had to use other way of defining agglomeration. So in a second part, well, I went looking for other models, and yes, in that period was precisely a profusion of new terms, and not always very well defined. So I look at a large part of them, and a first observation was there was a kind of geographical family, geographical link between territories and new concepts. So yes, here is the blue banana you were talking this morning, and I will refer to the work of French geographer Roger Brunet, the father of the blue banana, and also other French geographers. That's the map showing all the cities in Europe that have more than 10,000 inhabitants. And there is like a hard spin, a European hard spin that it's being emerging with this in this territory. So the geographer Roger Brunet defined them. He saw the three common characteristics. The first characteristic is the big amount of little towns, small towns. The second characteristic is the high density of networks. You can see here the highway network, and also very small territories, very instable boundaries of the territory. So I don't know how to say that, very découpé, hashed territories. The geographer Roger Brunet associated this observation to historical reasons, because he explained that they were in between territories. They correspond to a thick borderland between countries of Latin culture and German culture. And in the Middle Ages, traders preferred to use these roads rather than having to rely on two strong states like France and Germany. So this fact developed networks and also developed a big number of little towns, because they work more on exchange than in accumulation of goods in the towns. Unlike big, strong cities in stable territories like France, that will extend themselves and spread instead of multiplying the cities. So Belgian territory corresponds quite precisely to these three characteristics. The large amount of small towns I already told about, the highest highway network in Europe, and also a very complicated, I won't be in the details, but a very complicated boundaries and in the administrative limit in the territory based on language and regional reasons. So I focused mainly on concepts that were produced in those territories. So Deutschland, Germany, Switzerland, Italy, and also I added the French, more accurate theoretical concept proposed in France, but long before the other, in the 70s, 76, for the urbanization. So I compared mainly these ones. I won't be too long about the comparison, but what was interesting is that So there were countries, different countries, but almost the same period, and also authors very different. He is an urban planner, composites historian, they are spatial economy, agronomy, economy, and architect. It's maybe a bit long to make the comparison, but I can say that I ended up working with Città Diffusa because it was the only one with explicit definition, with discriminating criteria, very clear criteria. And I eliminated others to a lot of reasons, but the main reasons, for example, the French one remains in the model of a dominant center, and only the inhabitants go outside the city, but all the activities, the leisure, the trading, the commercial business still remains in a clear centrality. So that's that image they produce. They study this kind of territory that is very close to Città Diffusa, but always in relationship with the center. And this is only a living habitat and not other activities. Well, the Hypercity André Corbeau's actually says in one place that low density is not a characteristic of Hyperville. So for me, it wasn't very useful for the purpose I had. And the Zwischenstadt, the text is actually trying to describe everything and every scale, so it was not enough discriminating for me to use it as a definition. So, well, so by comparing those several terms and denominations, I could identify what was really specific of the Città Diffusa. So first of all, I recall what was the definition of the author, Francesco Indovina, and his team. So it's the first text that mentioned this concept of Città Diffusa. So they have three characteristics. They are quite evident, but maybe not the third one. Of course, a substantial mass of population, building and activities, also not only population. Of course, dispersed on a vast territory without dominant intensities. But also, a third characteristic is the high, all of that must be highly connected. And they talk about a horizontal mesh network. They clearly opposite it to the vertical metropolitan area, like Paris is the paradigm of this metropolitan area. That can be characterized by an attractive centrality and a dominant path and hierarchy zones. Bernardo Secchi used to say that the diffuse city is not the periphery of something, of nothing. And so that is very clearly different from the peri-urban French notion. Well, however, there are two additional characteristics that are in Indovina's work, but not explicitly pointed in the text. But I could highlight them by comparing with the other terms. So both of those characteristics relate to the time. I mean, the genesis, the way the territory developed in the time. So the first one is that the diffuse city is an urbanization not planned as such. It is the addition of one-off local autonomous interventions, decisions, which altogether form, in the end, an unexpected result. And the second one is that the diffuse city is formed by densification of already dispersed points. that grows and finally agglomerate to each other, but not by the spread and the sprawling of a urban too big density. So it is the Venetian countryside that is changing. It is the local inhabitants that change their way of life, but not in a first step urban people coming to the rural place. And that is also a big difference with the peri-urban or metropolitan area. Here I show two scales, territorial scale with the network and the local scale. There is a third scale, I don't have here an image, but there is a third scale that is very important in the work on Città Diffusa. It's the scale of the plot of land, very, very little scale, where the researchers shows that there is a mixed use of the plot of land, the parcel. You have 4 or 5 uses, different uses in a plot of land. You can live there, you can work there, you can have the storage, have so little manufacturers, also a little shop, and also vegetables in the garden. So 4 or 5 different uses in a only plot of land. So that are characteristics of Città Diffusa. So now my part about Belgium, and that was my question. Do those characteristics of the Città Diffusa, do they suit, do they match, and fit with the Belgian urbanization process, to the genesis of the thought? So I studied what was the causes, the factors that provoked that urbanization. There is a lot of ones from the Middle Age, as I already showed a little bit, from today. Sociology can also show how people like to be in a private house, but I focused mainly on the 20th century, the end of the 20th century and beginning of the 20th, because it's the moment where really there is a big emerging urbanization. It's that period where Brussels, for example, multiplied per 2 his population and surface. So and also the country I will show you. So the first factor is there are 3 laws. So the first law is the one that offered cheap transport tickets to the labor class for commuting journeys from housing place to working place. And distance allowed were until 100 kilometers. A second factor is a law that founded a national society for vicinal railways, so local railways, a new kind of cheap railroad that raised the existing network by more than 50%. And that was the network the most dense in the world at that period. And the third law created a large financial scheme to encourage l'ouvrier propriétaire, so the homeowner workman. So both the setting up of the local railway network and the development of this kind of housing are good examples of urbanization processes that I want to describe now, because they are very close to the Città Diffusa and maybe ranked among bottom-up processes. So first of all, the railway network, the local railway network. So here you have an image from that period, and an Englishman that compared 4 countries, and so it only shows the importance of that railway in Belgium, national, local, and compared with the other countries. So just to show that there is something different happening there. So the way it developed It is the addition of a large amount of autonomous lines to the existing railway network. This new railway was lighter, it needs less driving power, it is cheaper, and it is also more flexible. I can show you. That's the common railways, and that's the new local railway. So it's another technique that can go really, it slips in the countryside without bridges, headroads, tunnels are very expensive. And the carrying out of the line was a local initiative, a municipal. Several municipalities put together, and they asked to the society, National Society, and they proposed a route for a new railway. So the society carries out the technical studies, checks that there is no conflict with other national roads, and collects the money. 50% is paid by the state and 50% by local levels. So that economical autonomy of each line worked well and incited them to invest massively in this network, because it was based on their own needs. So you can see here the form. The red one is the dark one is the national, so it's already very dense, and we have the red ones that are in addition. I have a global. No, it's not here. Sorry, I have one to show the totality, but we'll show it afterward. And the housing now. The house building process, urbanized villages with a similar principle. So instead of the examples that I put upside, of massive building, labor, housing by public authorities or industrial persons, like in other states or in towns or in the factories. So instead of that, Belgian state runs a cheap loan for workers that want to build, and they can build their own house on the place they want and on the way they want. That was what they said at this period. So that's why urbanization was not designed for a planet, for a collective planning form, but only the addition of thousands and thousands of individual decisions. There is a word to describe those ways of making decisions, subsidiarity. In political science, they consider that was a Belgian contribution to the 19th century political thinking. So in very few words, it was about not having to organize everything. But Belgium is only independent since 1830, so it's like a pragmatic reaction. The Belgian state was very young and very busy, so the idea was, if we have already people doing something in general interest, just let them do it, and the state will grant allowance money to support these activities. So this subsidiarity is nowadays one of the 5 most important principles in the sustainability, and it is also the basis of competence attribution between European Union and European member states. Okay, so now in the last part, what is the result, the characteristic now of the territory that are resulting consequences from these ways of making decisions? A first characteristic is yes, a large mobility in a very low dense territory. So the mobility was very important in all directions, so isotropic, and not only toward big cities or industrial areas. So the shape of the network is not radio-concentric. When you can see it when you compare the same scale to Los Angeles, for example, or Paris. A second characteristic, but very limited, so yes, sorry. So the second characteristic is that, observation, is that transformation of the way of living is due to collective transport and not provoked by individual cars. This is the period of the development of this network, and this is when most people changed his way of life. So beginning working in another place than where they were living. Also, sociologists show that those commuting movements could be equally important from an industrial municipality as from rural points, and rural points can possibly be as attractive as urban places. So another example show how a village how a village that is very rural by its shape and geographical situation may be not agricultural as a function. So it's rural as a form, but not agricultural as a function. So that is an example, that there is a lot of them. Here we can see that agriculture is one occupation among 51 other different professions, and we have 8 people working as farmers among 182 other active people. So we have, yes, and that is true for a lot of other places. So at this point, we have, as in the diffuse city, an important commuter mobility and a scattering of the labor market in districts that are not necessarily cities, and also the horizontal meshed network. And the last characteristic is the dispersal of the housing places and their mode of production. So a last work that I did, it was building new documentary sources in order to visualize the evolution of a village under the influence of these laws. So the policy was, the policy of the state was to attempt that as many workers as possible become owners of their own house. And the worker that wanted to build his home asked to a local committee a certificate, and those certificates is the only thing we can't know now. We don't know where are the houses. They can be everywhere, but what we know is a quantitative approach. So we know it's a lot of them, but we don't know where they are. But we know also that the company that financed this way of having his house received 15 times more funds from the state than companies that build house themselves. So this is a fact that is often raised to underline how much Belgian workers preferred to build themselves their house. So these houses were only visible at the plot of land scale, in the land registers, historical land registers, and one by one, plot of land by plot of land. So methodologically, I had to turn the process upside down and to know where are the houses, I selected one village, or in fact 3 villages, and I looked at which houses were built following the law, and I can also know with the registers of landowners if they were workmen or not. So, well, that's kind of goal. So for me, what was very important is that the form of urbanization that were produced with those processes are not really dispersed suburban forms like the ones that are criticized today. So I made these maps with the archives. These maps is every 15 years. In red is the new building, and gray is the disappearing building. It shows that in spite of the dispersal factors we saw, the village did not took dispersed form. The division plots of lands and the new constructions made the existing village denser by filling the holes. New buildings did not propagate from plot to plot, but always in the same plot of land. And also new buildings occupied the smallest plots as well as the larger. So it's a very different way of urbanization than the suburban one that we have today. And the houses were not isolated, were not detached. They integrated common rules, relationships, and like an urban way of urbanization. So, to conclude, this urbanization, well, I didn't talk about the houses, but I also made a study about this scale, and I could show that we have also the mixed use of the house with agriculture in the gardens afterwards, and there is a kind of yes, there is also extension of the houses that were made for agricultural activities. So the people that lived there had industrial activity and rural activity, both in the same family. So yes, to conclude, that urbanization was very close to the notion of diffuse city, città diffusa, if we take it in a large scale, because indeed there was a great amount of individual houses spread in a big number of villages and characterized with mixed activities, an important mobility network, and autonomous adding piece to each other one by one. But on the contrary, at a local level, scale, the urbanization process did not take the shape of the current development in dead ends, for example, nor the suburban houses isolated from each others. And also at the national scale, the evolution was going towards metropolization in the 20th century. The network concentrated on Brussels and on the big cities. And actually the network today is less and less is isotropic. I can show you just here. That was the railway situation in 19, and this is now so very radial and radioconcentric form in that national scale. So I wanted to conclude showing that so this kind of dispersal of urbanization had living qualities of sociality, economy, productivity, and that it has been framed much before the car influences and with individual or local initiative. And furthermore, what is now interesting me is not so much the dispersed forms anymore. It's much more, yes, it's much more than a question of form. And what I think is interesting is how this urbanization has been able to organize itself, well, in a previous very dense frame of villages, but to create rules and minor structures to develop this urbanity without being formally planned. And it seems to me that it is very close to urban process that nowadays urbanists are looking for. In France, they are talking about an ouvert, what is umberto, open, yes, open, I don't know how to say it in English. Also, the hardware of the crimson, or well, every development of bottom-up with inhabitants, the tactical urbanism, doing tiniest action for large reaction, etc. So, I have another one, just the last one. So, for me, it's quite sure that this kind of urbanism carries other values, society values, than those that are, I think, influenced by the modern vision, and that are still now conveyed by current town planning, sometimes very implicitly. I think about the zoning way of thinking space, the hierarchy, the centralities, authorities, the idea of equality, the unique model that is suitable for everyone, etc. So modern vision. This kind of urbanism, I think, articulates in another way individual and collectivity, private and public. It gives, following me, more consciousness of interactions than the zone system of perimeters. And it is possible to have degree of freedom for individual choice, so interaction, opportunities also for collective construction, common projects, bottom-up decision, etc., and also public actions for and when it is necessary. And among those public actions, of course, there is the need to build a common vision of the territory, and that can be shared by all the population. So I think that's what our generation of urban researchers are looking, or maybe something like that, to go beyond the modern models. Sorry, I'm not very clear in English.
Thank you, Bénédicte.